So what we're going to talk about today are job descriptions inside of TouchStone. And I'm going to discuss technically how to build the job descriptions, but then more importantly, I'm going to talk about how to use them in TouchStone, how to use them as a management tool. So we're on what's called the dashboard right now, and this is the first screen that you see when you first log into TouchStone. So what happens on the dashboard is employees are able to access the processes that they're responsible for. So when you set up the control panels right here, since I'm the manager of admin and finance in this demo account, if I click this position here, then I'm going to see all the processes that I'm responsible for. These are all the processes from the job description. So we're going to talk about job descriptions, and then I'm going to loop back to this dashboard and kind of show you the relevance of job descriptions on the dashboard. So let's go to the organization chart. Once you've built your organization chart, you can then start to build your job descriptions. Every box on the organization chart, when it's selected, opens up a job description. So this is what it looks like once it's built. So every box that you put on your organization chart, you're able to create a job description for. So I'm going to add a box to this chart just so you can see what it looks like when the job description hasn't been created. So I'm typing in a position title here. And now TouchStone's asking me which box I want to put this under on the organization chart. So I'm going to put it under admin finance here for fun. And then I just hit save. So now I've just created this new box over here, and you see it under Admin Finance Manager. When you select the box from the chart, it takes you to the job description for this position. So this is what it looks like when it's blank, when it hasn't been created yet. The job description has got two sections to it. There's strategic and tactical. So these are just two categories of processes or of work. Strategic processes are generally higher level type work, managerial work, developing things, strategizing things, analyzing things. So this is generally work that's done by higher level positions, managerial positions, leaders. Then there's the tactical work, which is the technical work. It's like the doing it work. It's very common on a managerial job description like this one here, that there would be a lot of strategic processes and maybe just a few tactical. It's also common on a non-managerial position like this one, that there would be just a few strategic processes, if any, and then mostly tactical. So just something to think about when you're, categorizing the work and envisioning what each position will be doing. So I'm just going to select this box here again. Right here is how you can edit the title of the position. Most everything in TouchStone is click to edit. So if I click this, it's going to open for me to be able to edit. So I just change the title, and then I can hit save here, and then it saves it. Underneath the title here, there's this field called objective. So this is a field that's used mostly to describe the purpose of the position. What is it here to do? What is its overall result? So this could be a sentence or a phrase which describes the overall goal of the position. Sometimes I've seen this as like the top 3 results the position is supposed to achieve. That was really like a popular management thing a few years ago, where I can't remember who wrote the book, but they said that no person can have more than 3 results. So you could list those if you wanted to. This holds the formatting, so you can put spaces here and make a list of things if you wanted to. What I would say is to keep this high level, like keep it brief. Make it be a few sentences at the most. So I'll show you some examples of those. So here's the marketing manager. Create marketing strategies and objectives and manage the sales department. Very high level. Here, hopefully this has one. So no, it doesn't. How about customer service? Ensure all customers are satisfied with the company's products and services. So keep it high level, an overall arching result. So now I'm just going to go back here to this box. Right here, this icon and this icon, these two, are how you build the job descriptions. So how TouchStone's organized is over here on the 4 functions, we have a list of all the processes. So like I showed you in the first webinar session, every process in TouchStone is here, listed by category. Then we have the org chart, which is all the people, all the positions. So all the processes are here, and all the people, the positions are here. How the two come together, how the 4 functions in the org chart come together, is we take all the processes from the 4 functions and we link them to one box or another on the org chart. So we assign accountability for everything that's here to these various positions. So we've got this big master list, and then you assign accountability for all that work to the various positions on the org chart. That's how these two tools work together. So if we go back here to this job description, if I use this icon called Add Existing Process, this will allow me to look over at the 4 functions and choose the processes that this position is responsible for. It's called Add Existing Process because it exists on the 4 functions list already. So if I go Add Existing Process, TouchStone's now just asking me, do I want it in the strategic or the tactical section of the job description? If this was a managerial position, I might start with the strategic processes first, and then I would go hit this sub-function drop-down. So now I'm seeing all my sub-functions from the 4 functions list. This is every single sub-function. And if I was going to add managerial work, say, I'd probably go here to this employee management sub-function, and now I'm seeing all the managerial work or all the processes that I have listed there. And then I would choose the processes I want, and I can pick and choose, or I can choose them all. And then I hit Save in the bottom corner here. Now TouchStone's just linked those processes from the 4 functions list here to this position. So I've assigned accountability. Once I was happy with the strategic processes, I'd probably go back, Add Existing. Then you can choose this type tactical, and then go back to the sub-function dropdown. And then I'd probably go to a sub-function that was related to this position. So you can look through every single one if you want. Just click, look through these, say, is there anything here? No. Then go back, go here. Is there anything here? No. You can go through every single one, but more times than not, the work of this position is probably within one of the 4 key functions that's related to the position. So we put this in admin finance, that department. So if I went to admin right here, I'm likely to see the processes that this position is that's related to. So again, I would choose the ones that I want to link to this position, and then I just hit Save. There's another way to get processes on a job description, and that's to use this icon right here called Add New Process. So when this is generally used is, number one, if you haven't done your 4 functions list, so you didn't go and pull anything from the library, you didn't add processes here, but rather you went right to the org chart, built your org chart, and then clicked the boxes and wanted to start building the job descriptions from that view. So you could do that. And how you would do that is you just go Add New Process, and then you'd put in the name of the process. I'm just going to choose Name. So you title it. Then TouchStone's asking you where you want it on the 4 functions list, because that's always going to be the master list. So even though we're adding a process directly to this job description, TouchStone's still going to force us to keep the 4 function lists as the master list. So I'd hit the drop down here and I choose the sub-function that this process belongs in. So think about the subject of it, the type of work. Choose the sub-function and then hit Save. And then it appears like this. So you can go and build the job descriptions one at a time just by thinking of what's the work of this position and then listing it out this way. You're still going to be building your 4 functions list because TouchStone forces you to do that. Or another thing that's more common is I may have built this job description by going Add Existing Process and linking the processes. And then as I'm looking at it, I think, I've missed some processes. I forgot this work. So if that's the case, then you just go add new process and add the work that's missing. When you're looking at things from the 4 key functions view, it's a good way to holistically look at everything and start to list it out by subject area. But you may not get it perfectly right. You may forget things. When you link the processes to the job descriptions, it sometimes reveals what you've missed. So don't think you've done anything wrong if you build the job descriptions and then you look and you say, there's quite a bit missing here. Just go ahead and add it. Go add new and add it. Now you'll notice how this process here is red, and I went over this in the first session, but I'll just mention it again. This process is red right here because we just entered it. There's nothing in it. If I click it, this is just blank. There's nothing here. It's just a title right now. From this screen, too, you can also see where it is on the 4 functions list because we put it in the admin subfunction in the running the business function. This process in particular is blue because there's some content in it. So if I click this and you look over here, there's a work plan on how to manage employee lateness. When you're finished with the documentation of a process, like you've decided this is done, you fill in this box here that says process documentation completed. And then if I hit the back button here, you'll see now this process's title is black. So you manually turn things black. Someone's asking about turning it, once it's black, I'm paraphrasing, once it's black, can you turn it back to blue? And the answer is yes. It's all manual. So I just click this process and I uncheck it, and now it's going to be blue again. Sometimes employees who are documenting processes get a little overzealous and they put in a work plan maybe with one task and they're like, that's done. So make sure that you have a manager reviewing things. So when somebody thinks something's done, have someone review the employee lateness, and then tell them, okay, you can mark this as complete. Because once something's marked as complete, it's sometimes just thought, it's complete. But if it's not been evaluated, you don't really know how, if it's actually done or not. Another thing you'll notice here is underneath this title, this process title that we just added, there's no objective. This field is blank right here. The objective is right under the title, to manage and deal with employee lateness. Key performance indicators, a business matrix. So it's the purpose or what's in the process. Those are the best objectives. The best objective is if I can look at this and I know what's supposed to be in here. I know what this process is about. So once you've built the job descriptions, if you're missing these objectives, then just fill them in. So click the process, go here to the objective field, and just put in the purpose. Sometimes the title itself tells you what's in it, which is fine, but a lot of times it doesn't. You could look at it and you can't tell from the title what's supposed to be in it. And even worse, if you were the one who put that process title in and then you go look at it 3 weeks later and you're thinking to yourself, what did I think when I was adding that? I don't even remember. Then that's even worse. So a good technique is the minute you add a process title, go put the objective in right away, just so you're really crystal clear on what is supposed to be in this and what you were thinking about when you listed that process. Everything on the job description screen, all the processes are all drag and drop too. So I'm just holding my mouse up and down. I can also drag from strategic to tactical. So I just move this from this section to this section. So if you're not happy with how you've organized the processes in strategic or tactical, or you didn't know what that meant and now you do, then just reorder them. Just drag and drop to reorder them. Once a job description is built, I think it's also a good idea to organize the processes in order of priority of documentation. Eventually, when everything is marked as complete and you've done all the documentation, you could put them in alphabetical order or whatever you want. But as they're being developed, I think it's a good protocol to at the top of the list, and you would organize each section, tactical and strategic, differently. But you would take the process somebody's working on and move it to the top. If things are done, you move them to the bottom, like this. So these two blue ones, I'd put them at the top. What's done's at the bottom. You can even go to the titles of the process, like this one, and you can put in the name of who's working on this. So I can go put in my initials, and I can even put like a tentative due date for the process. And then I save it. And then when we go back here, you'll see my initials right in here with the tentative due date. So what I like to see in companies that are working over time to document their processes, which is everybody, is some kind of project management of the documentation on the job description page like this. There's no reason to export all this out and to make some other kind of spreadsheet somewhere else. You do it right inside of TouchStone. So you look at every job description, decide who's going to help document it, if it's just one person, if it's multiple people. Put the processes at the top, put them in order of priority of how you're going to document. The one that somebody's working on is always going to be at the top here, have their initials in it, have a tentative due date. When that due date rolls around, whoever is managing this would go to the process, review it, make sure it's accurate, it's good. You can even use the document tool to make notes to the person who is documenting it of things you want them to add. When you're happy with the documentation, you just go to the title again, get rid of this, hit save, and then mark it as complete. And then take that and drag it down. And now we're working on this one. So this is just a way for slowly over time for you to pick away at documenting of the processes. And the more people you have involved, the better. So think about each of the positions on your org chart once the job descriptions are built, and kind of consider who are good people to help you documenting those and working on those processes. Assign them the process, give them a week or 2 weeks, put in a due date, and just kind of track it and manage it over time. I'm going to go back here for a second. If you want to remove a process from a job description, so you've built the job descriptions and then you look at it and you're like, oh, this one's wrong. It's not supposed to be on here. You go to this little X icon here. And when I click this, I'm seeing the remove buttons appear next to all the process titles. Now you notice it says remove. It doesn't say delete. So TouchStone's not going to delete anything from the job description page. It just removes it from the job description. So if I click remove on this one, it's going to say, are you sure? I say, okay. Now that process is gone from this job description, but if we went back over here to the 4 functions, we'd find it in running the business. So remember that, because sometimes people think that it's being deleted, but it's actually not. And so you may have processes over here on the 4 functions that you really wanted to delete and you haven't, and they're still there. But also know the opposite is true. You just can remove it and be perfectly comfortable in the fact that it's not deleted from TouchStone. There's another way to remove processes from a job description. And let me just show you that real quickly. If I choose the process, so now we're on the documentation screen, we're on the process tools screen. From this screen, I can see where the process is on the 4 functions, first of all, always with this breadcrumb trail here. It's always showing me where this process lives on the 4 functions. And if I go here where it says link to job description and hit the drop down, I can see which positions it's been linked to from this view. So this is just the org chart in tree view. And the orange positions here are the ones that this process has been linked to. So from this view, I can link it and unlink it. So if I click this, it's just going to remove it from this position it was on before. And you know that because it's gray now. But if I'm looking at it from this view and I think to myself, well, this employee lateness, it really should be on all the manager's job descriptions. I'm not sure why it wasn't put there. You can quickly, with just a few clicks, link it to all the managers. So you click the manager, and this is probably a strategic process, and I hit link. Now it's on the manager, marketing and sales. I can go operations manager, link. I can go service manager, link. So from this view, you can quickly put a process on multiple job descriptions all at one time. So remember this link to job description. Once your job descriptions have been built, this is a good way to just double check that this particular process has been linked to the correct job descriptions just by going here. If you add a new process and you add it to the 4 functions list, once your job descriptions have been built, it's always a good idea to then go to that process you've added, go link to job description, and link it to the positions that it needs to be linked to. And again, this is a quick way to do that, particularly if it goes on multiple people's job descriptions. A managerial process like this one, the employee lateness, this would be the accountability of all these people. So you'll have several managerial processes that are on every manager's job description, because in dealing with employee lateness, everyone should do it the same way. All the managers should deal with it in the same way. Therefore, they're all accountable for this process. So let's go back to the organization chart. One more technical thing I want to show you under here. This icon here is the export icon, and you're going to see this all throughout TouchStone, and it means the same thing everywhere that you see it. On this screen, on the job description screen, I can print the job description, I can export it to Word, I can export it to a PDF. This is probably the most polished look to the print feature, the PDF version. Word is it's a writable format, so you can kind of edit things and move sections around in Word. You can email it, and then here at the bottom you can do what's called print the operating manual for the position. So what that'll do is it prints the job description, which is like a table of contents for the operating manual. I'll just go to this so you can see. And then it's going to print all the tools inside of every process. If we open this up, you'll see it in Word. Drag it over here. So this is what it looks like. And I have an old version of Word, that's why it looks a little funky, but with the newer versions it looks better. So this is operating manual is for the position of, and this is my funky title, but then here's the job description, which is like a table of contents for the operating manual. And then it lists every process. So it gives it a title page, and then here's the work plan for emergency procedures. And then it goes into all the work plans in that process. There's a checklist in that process, so here's the checklist. So when you export it to Word, you can format the pages differently, and ultimately you could save it as a PDF if you wanted to and print it and have an external manual if you ever wanted it. Now, I understand that there are reasons that people would want external manuals, like if you have someone driving around in a truck and they don't even have a phone, maybe. Other than that, there really is no reason. I'm just kidding. I don't think there's any reason that you should print operating manuals, particularly because you have a tool like TouchStone. There's no reason for it, because anybody can be made a user to TouchStone with read-only access, and they can go and view all their processes. They can print their processes if they want to. The minute you start exporting things, you're kind of losing the value of TouchStone, because you've got another copy of it all out there. If somebody goes to that copy, to that Word document, and starts editing it from there because they're not familiar with TouchStone or they haven't been trained in it, well, now you've got multiple versions of things out there. So just remember, hopefully, one of the reasons you gravitated to TouchStone, because it's up to date all the time. It is on the internet and accessible as long as you have an internet connection. Everything in it is organized and accurate. There's no duplicates. There's no redundancy. Nobody has done save as and suddenly there's 5 versions. So that's just my 2 cents about printing. Clearly, printing is important for people. It's a comfort thing, and you can print anything and everything in TouchStone, but think twice about that. Try to get more into the habit of a paperless environment. So rather than printing this, I might go up to this URL right here and copy this, and then I might paste it into an email to someone, even rather than emailing it to them here. I'd rather do that. I copy the URL, I email it to them, and I say, hey, go look at your job description. As long as they're past the username and password screen, they go right to the job description and TouchStone with one click, even on their phones, even on mobile devices. Okay, so let's go back here to the org chart. So that's technically how you build the job descriptions in TouchStone. Either you've done your 4 functions list, and you've built your org chart, and then you go add existing process, link, 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 add, and boom, it's built. Or you go right to a box on the org chart, you go add existing process and add the process titles. Once the job descriptions are built, you've got your process infrastructure organized really well. You got everything listed in the 4 functions, org chart, picture of all your people, job descriptions, a list of what everybody does. Those are 3 amazing things to have as a business owner or even as a manager. At that point, it's a slow, methodical, over time effort to get all the processes documented. It doesn't happen with the snap of a finger. It's over time things get implemented. Having said that, you can start to use the job descriptions in TouchStone right away. So I'm going to talk just for a minute about the value of having a TouchStone-like job description and how to use it as a manager, how a manager should use it, and how employees should use it. So first thing is, over here on the dashboard, once the job descriptions are built, if you go and assign people positions from the org chart, like this one here, when they select that position or that control panel, it shows them their job description. So that's what this is. The only reason it looks a little different is I've made these groups. So I created a group using this tool right here, and I called it management. And then I just took the processes and dragged them into this category called management from the default list. I created one called finance, and then I put the finance things in that list. I made one called human resources, and I put all the human resource processes there. And just everything's drag and drop here. I just organized them. I made one called admin. So you can create these little work groups and help organize the processes. It's not just strategic and tactical. You have the ability to create these custom work groups. I've also seen these done by timing, like particularly for administrative or finance positions, sometimes service delivery. You can have like things I do at the first of the month or things I do at the end of the month, things I do annually, and put the processes in there. So timing or by subject area. In this was like an online marketing company, but they had some admin people where they had to do tasks at certain times during the day. So they had their groups like 8 a.m., 10 a.m., 1 p.m., and then they organized processes into those types of groups. So you can get creative with this, and the idea is that you want to put the work into categories that make sense for that position and help people to see what they're accountable for and how to do it. So this is a mirror image of the job description that on the 4 key functions list. If I was to go here to this job description on the org chart, if I remove this process, well, it's going to remove it from the dashboard control panel. If I add a process, then it's going to add it. So whatever you've put here or you've added or deleted from here, this is going to be an exact picture of that on the dashboard. For those of you who don't know, if your whole dashboard is blank and you haven't done this yet, assigned people to positions, if you go up here to account administration and go to user accounts, here's where you can set up your user list and then assign the control panels. Once your org chart's done, even if you haven't done your job descriptions yet, you can go and do that work. You just click the person's name, you go here to control panel, and then you choose the position that they're responsible for. So I've got this one called admin finance. Because I'm the manager of this department, I see all these people in management review, which is also on the dashboard. So there's going to be a lot more conversation and a whole session around the dashboard functionality, but I just wanted you to see the connection between the organization chart and the job descriptions that we were just talking about and what happens here on the dashboard. So job descriptions have a variety of uses, but I'm just going to highlight a few of the key uses. Number one, the job description is fantastic for new employee training. It's just amazing for new employee training. So for new employee training, when you look at the job description like this one, this is a list, a comprehensive list of everything that this position is responsible for. So I'd probably drag these two down just so people can see it. I'd probably make these, all tactical. This one maybe higher level compensation plan. So this is everything that the bookkeeper needs to be trained in. These are the 10 key processes that the bookkeeper does. If I hire a new bookkeeper, I can see clearly what that person needs to be trained on. That's not some casual thing. That's a really effective, useful thing to know. If you don't have job descriptions like this, or you don't have at least a list of what the person needs to be trained on, it's very difficult for the training to occur effectively. It becomes like, just watch me do this and get a little sticky note and make notes while we go through it. That's the training that just everybody hates, and it's incredibly ineffective. So just having this job description, even if none of the documentation was done for this would be fantastic for new employee training. Now on the dashboard functionality, I can literally make this a checklist that I'm going to train the bookkeeper on. So if we go here to the dashboard, let's say we just hired Mike here to be the new bookkeeper. If I click his name in management review here, I'm his manager, I can see all of his processes. Now these have been organized into these categories. Things he does on the 1st of the month, 15th of the month, just a basic financial management. So I've organized these into some kind of categories or groups. This is also a cool group on demand. It means like whenever you have to do it, you have to do it. It's not really rudimentary. It's just whenever you need it, there it is. So if I was training Mike brand new, I'd probably change these groups. So I'd go edit group. And you may, for a new employee, you probably wouldn't even have these group areas, but I'd probably call this, there it is, week 1, save it. So I'm planning out his training. I'm going to edit this one and call it week 2. So this is week 2 now. So all I'm doing is editing these titles here, these group titles. Let's edit this one too. So week 3. So I change this one and I call it week 3. So I'm thinking it's going to take 2 months to train Mike, and I'm breaking it up into weeks and what he's going to learn in those weeks. So then I would drag the processes into the areas into the weeks or the schedule for his training. So I'm doing all this as his manager in management review. You probably want to think to yourself, how long is it going to take an efficient person to learn these 3 things? Can he learn it in a week? In order to think that through, you might want to look at the content of the process if you've started to document it. So this is all the different work plans he needs to learn regarding accounts payable. So think to yourself, if somebody was efficient at this and I was teaching them how to create special invoices, how long should that take? And you can even keep training notes in here, like under special invoices, I could say, 4 hours, just to kind of remind myself of, the amount of time I thought it would take. So you're planning out the training. Again, even if these processes aren't documented, this is far better than not doing it at all. So thinking about accounts payable, even if it's not documented yet, and thinking to yourself, okay, if he's going to watch over my shoulder or watch this other person do it, how long do I think it should take? If you add up all the time, then you organize it into weeks, which is the first step. Then you can even think to yourself, well, if I'm going to take a week for him to learn these 3 processes, I can times that 40 hours by what I'm paying him, and then take in some overhead, management time, and then if I add that all up for all 3 of these weeks, I suddenly have a pretty good idea of what it's going to cost me to hire a new bookkeeper. And if any of you are working on scaling your businesses, so growing your businesses, you can see how useful that would be. If I knew how long it would take me to train this person, to then train this person, to then get them up here, and I knew the dollar amount of that, well, that's really useful information. And the management review area in TouchStone and the job description helps you achieve this result. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be, exactly what you planned, but it's way better than not doing it at all. It's way better than just the tribal method of training where you're just like, I hope he gets it over the next 2 weeks. So plan out the training like this. Then Mike goes into his dashboard and he starts studying. So in week 1, he starts with accounts payable. If there's documentation, he reads those work plans, he studies that information, he watches videos that are in there. Any content you have in these processes, he reviews it and goes over it. Then as a manager, you have him watch someone else do it, you test his abilities, you tell him to run a payables report, you make sure you did it right. In the end, when you're happy with his training, you then go back here to this process, and you can do what I'm about to do individually for each work plan if you want to, or you can go up here and just flip this flag, and you get these little green check marks. So this is what I mean by it's a checklist for new employee training. Boom, he's done with that. Okay, now we're on to collections. This should have taken in week 1 maybe a day or 2, and then we've got a day left for this and 2 days left for this. So it becomes this overarching checklist that you go through with Mike until he's trained in all of the processes. I talked a little bit about this last week, but I'll just say it again. This also really helps the manager to decide if they've made a bad hire or not. So if I hired Mike and I'm teaching him accounts payable here, and I know a competent person should be able to learn all 3 of these in 1 week, we're already on day 4, and he just can't run the payables report. He can't do the collections because he's afraid to call people. I showed him, and he went through this work plan 5 times, and he's still making mistakes. That might be a sign to me as the manager that I made a bad hire, that this is a bad decision to hire Mike. Now, if that's the decision, I should probably go back and relook at the recruiting and hiring to make sure that we're vetting people better next time. But sometimes these mistakes occur. And if you can see it, tangibly speaking, through this kind of lens, then it makes the decision on whether to cut your losses with Mike now rather than waiting. If you know what it's going to cost you to get a new bookkeeper and you're already a week in with Mike, chances are you're going to say to yourself, let's cut our losses now and go try to find someone else. It helps you decide before it's too late that if you've made a bad hire. What happens in a lot of small businesses is you don't have a good way to figure out if you've made a bad hire. So you just start living with that person's mistakes. You say to yourself, well, he's not going to be good at accounts payable. So let's all keep doing that. We won't have him do that. We'll have him do something else. He's better at purchasing, so he can focus more time here. So now you're making people-dependent allowances for what his skills are, rather than saying, these are the skills of the position. This is the thing they need to learn. I need to find someone who's going to be able to fill that role. The cost of a bad hire is like, I can't even remember the statistics. It's a lot. It's something like twice their annual salary. It's huge. So this is worth your money to do. So new employee training, excellent use of a job description. So let's go back here. Just another quick technique. If you have, for new employee training, if I was to go let's go here, like I'm teaching Mike customer complaints, I could go to the work plan right here. And even though I might not want a checklist for this ongoing, I could make a checklist just with 1 click. Now, boom, this is a checklist. And I could call this for training, like that. And I'm just going to link this to the control panel I have right now, just so you can see. Oh, it is. Good. So I just made a training checklist. All I did was take the work plan, and with 1 click, I turned it into a checklist. Now, if we go to the dashboard here, and let's imagine I'm new, and I'm going to learn this customer complaint process, I could be required for, I don't know, the first week or 2 to always use this checklist. So I put the person's complaining's name in, I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this, and then I save it. So this might not be forever, But as I'm learning, these little training checklists can be really useful because you're focusing the new person learning it on that particular task and saying, I did this, I did this, I did this. Now, once they're proficient at it, been up and running for a while, you can just delete this training checklist because you won't need it. So think about little things like that. So let's talk about another use of a job description. So we have new employee training. The second most key effective use of a job description is for what I would call ongoing training, or the managing of that employee in the work that they're doing day to day. The job description is a fundamental tool for that. So if I'm this person up here, if I'm the manager, it's my responsibility to make sure that all of the people who report to me get their results. So they are working to achieve results. That's my primary accountability as a manager. Now, I care if they're happy and liking their job. All that's important too. But my primary concern is that they're achieving their results. First of all, if I have documented processes for everything that they do, well, then that just makes this job so much easier. But even if I don't have all the documented processes, if I just have the job description, which is a list of what they're supposed to be doing, it's not everything. There's probably special projects and other things I'll ask people to do, but their rudimentary work is all listed on that job description, then I can use that to manage them with. So I'll give you a few examples of this. So let's go to the receptionist this time. So if I have a receptionist and she's going about doing her work day to day, and I notice that there's an issue. So people have been complaining that they're not getting their messages, which is this process right here. Or she hasn't turned in all the purchase orders and people are complaining because the stuff isn't getting purchased. Or I'm listening her talk to clients and prospects on the phone and just think to myself, why is she saying that? So issues are occurring. Rather than going to her and saying, what's wrong with you? Why are you talking to them that way? Or, where is his message? And that's and rather than getting upset with her and saying, why aren't you doing this? What's wrong with you? What's happening? I can sit down with her with this job description on the dashboard together. I'm just doing it from this view now, but that's where you would do it, through the dashboard. And I would say, Bob hasn't been getting his messages. Let's go through the communications process. Let's just look at it together. So here's how you take the message log and how you track the calls. What's going wrong? What's wrong with the process? Let's look at it together. What's happening? Explain it to me. How can I help you? So I'm saying to her, what's wrong with the process? How can I help you? How can we change the process if that's necessary? How can we add to it? Maybe there's something happening with your workflow that's new that made it so this isn't working anymore. What's wrong with the process? I'm not saying to her, what's wrong with you? You're so incompetent. I told you 5 times. I said it yesterday. I told you last week. That is the management everybody hates. That's like, what causes employees to feel upset. It's what we all hate about management. So this job description gives you a new way to manage employees. We're focusing on the process, and we're saying, how could it be better? How can I guide you with it? It's much better than having some intangible emotional thing go on about how you don't like how she's talking to people or where she put that message. It's not about that anymore. It's about the tangible process. It's a relief for a manager. It gives me an objective, constructive way to come to the employee. And it's also a relief for the employee. Because honestly, employees aren't out there just being insubordinate and not caring what you think and feel. They may feel that way sometimes, but they're really not. There's a lot going on. They don't know what to do. They haven't been trained thoroughly. They're overwhelmed with so many things that they're supposed to be doing. They're having a bad day. Whatever it is, it's usually not just insubordination. So the job description can be helpful in this way for a manager to communicate about things that are going wrong and how they could be better. It's also a way to communicate about things that are going well. So if I walked in the door and I noticed how she was using this process and a client was sitting there really happy and got to the right person on time, I might say to her, God, you're really doing, that sounded great. You really have a great way with these people. You're really following, you're using that script really well. Or I heard you say X, Y, and Z. Is that in the script? Let's go put that in the script. So managers need to acknowledge the good things going on. I think managers are often overwhelmed on their own with all the stresses of trying to manage with no processes, but also being taxed with technical work and no time for managerial work. There's all kinds of things that go on with managers. And the last thing that we have time for is to sit and try to look for things to appreciate our employees about. So this is, the job description can be a reminder of that, where we can sit and think, oh, there's a process for communications. There's a process for purchase orders. She's doing that really well. So communicate about the good and the bad. There's a couple tools that I'll just highlight from the library, which really help reinforce this idea of using the job description as a management tool. So one of them is a process called one-on-one meetings. So I'm going over here to guiding the business. And if you go add from process library right here, you'll find this process in the process library. And it's called employee one-on-one meetings. I have it right here. So this is a really simple process. This is one of those processes in TouchStone where I think, if somebody just uses this and nothing else, then this is money well spent on a system like TouchStone. Hopefully you would use more than that, but a simple process like this one could really go a long way. So this is about just having a regular time where you meet with your employees one-on-one. This is a no-brainer. It's not rocket science. This is something you probably all have thought of before. It really helps, a process like this really helps to teach a manager to effectively use the job description as a management tool. So set a schedule for these meetings. It could be once a week, which is nice. It could be once a month. I would say once a quarter at absolute minimum. If that's all you can do and you can give me a huge list of reasons why, fine. But once a quarter would be the minimum. Once a month sometimes is a better, a more doable situation given your schedule, but once a week, is the gold standard, I would say. In this meeting, you sit down with the employee. It could be a half an hour. It could be an hour. It doesn't have to be a huge amount of time. And that's your time to sit with that person one-on-one and really talk to them about what's going on. You can talk about intangible things like how are they feeling? How is their life going? Contact like that is good for a manager to have. It shows that you care, even if you don't care. So some amount of that. But most of it is about how's work going. Let's look at the processes on the job description. Let's go over those together. How is your meeting follow-up going? How are you feeling when people walk in the door and your ability to make them feel comfortable? What's happening with the phone system and how the messages come in? How's that going? So you use the job description as an agenda for the meeting. There's this little custom form in here that you can use, and it's got action areas. So here it says items to discuss, and you could go to the job description and put in, the top 3 processes you want to talk about. And then you could have goals for those processes. So things that you want the employee to focus on. It could be the documenting of a process. It doesn't necessarily have to be how they're doing that process. It could be the documenting. You could put goals for next period. You could put identify or resolve any work or personal issues going on. So this is just a really simple meeting agenda form that a manager can use. You can go, I'm just going to make sure this is on my job description yep. You can go in the dashboard as a manager. So I'm going back to the dashboard here. I'm clicking my position. Here's that one-on-one meeting process, the same one. It's just been linked to my job description. And I select it, and then I could go here to this agenda form. And now these fields are live. I can put in the employee's name. I can put in the date of the meeting. Here I can put items to discuss, and these could be processes from the job description. One that I want to talk about this week. It could be 2 or 3. So here I'm filling out all of these goals, what I want to talk about in the meeting, and then I just save it, and now this is in TouchStone. When I'm having these meetings, I literally have these agenda forms open, usually on my iPad, and I don't ever print these things. You could print it because once you save it, this little print button here allows you to print it. This creates a PDF that you could download somewhere else if you wanted to as well, but you could print it. And so here we just go through this agenda form, and oftentimes I'll go, once I'm done with the meeting, and I'll create the agenda form for the next week. So I'll go agenda meeting, and then I'm making this, that I'm saving as their name, and I put in the next week's date. And then things that I'm off the top of my head that I know I want to talk about, I fill in here. So this is about using the job description and also implementing some effective management processes with employees. This is my job description, manager, theoretically, manager of admin finance. This is my job description. So this process is something I'm accountable for. And I can use it right in TouchStone. As a manager, it's also achieving the results that I need with my employees. So this is a great process. Any version of this that you can come up with or that you like to implement and use, this is a great way to make sure that you're giving time to your employees in an effective way. In the end, it also is a time saver, and you may have to prove this to yourself. I'm sure I could prove it to you. If you start saving things for the meeting, it's going to cause you to be more efficient. So if there's something that's an emergency and I need to go tell you right away, it's a big red flag, then obviously go deal with that. But if it's something that can wait for the meeting, wait for the meeting. It gives you more time to think about it. You're not interrupting them. You're not interrupting yourself. You're not interrupting another person. Put it into the meeting agenda form and save it for the meeting. If you do this as a manager efficiently, it's a great time management saving tool, and it's also going to show you over time how effective these meetings can be. There is one more process related to using the job description as a management tool that I just want to talk about before we run out of time here, and it is performance evaluations, my favorite thing. So this is also a great management tool which is used, its primary, the backbone of it is the job description. So in TouchStone, if you download this process from the library and it's in Guiding the Business, and I click here on this work plan, it gives you a step-by-step. It also has a tutorial, it has a video in it, on how to take the job description and turn that into a performance review. So this is a step-by-step. You just copy the job description, you paste it into the form, and it's pretty simple. This is an example of one. So this is one for a salesperson. Right here is the work listing, request for information, referral process, contracts and proposals. This is the work from the job description. That's all this is. So the performance review, the heart of the performance review is you as the manager reviewing the job description with the employee, the one right inside of TouchStone. I would just go through and give a rating, 1 to 5, give the grade, and write comments. The template also has stuff like this, like overall things like attitude, workability, stuff like that, which is good to talk about once a year. But the heart of it is the processes from the job description. Now, if you had been going and having your one-on-one meetings every week or even every month all throughout the year, and you've been using the job description when there's problems, when there's successes, and you're referring to it and you're saying, how's the referral process going? Or there's this issue with scheduling, let's talk about the process. If you've been doing that all year long, when you sit down to do this performance review, it's going to take you like 5 minutes to fill this out. I think one of the things that I always hated about doing performance reviews is I felt like I had to make it up, like at the end of the year. I could kind of remember things, but I had to kind of make it up. And I don't like someone, so I know they've had problems, but I couldn't tell you what they exactly were, and so I'm going to give them a low grade. And now I have to write comments. And what's even scarier is if they say, well, what do you mean by that comment? Or why did you give me that grade? If you don't have a good answer, then that's a very difficult situation to be in. If you've been using the job description as a management tool, going through this one-on-one meeting process, this is going to be a no-brainer. You're going to fill it out in 5 minutes, and more importantly, the employee is going to know exactly what you mean and why you gave them a 5 or why you gave them a 1 on request for information. They're going to know because you've been talking to them about it. It's very tangible and clear. They already know. So that is, a huge reason that using the job description and then following it up every year with a performance review like this one is satisfying for your employees and yourself. Again, this can also be used on the dashboard by the manager. So the manager could go here to the control panel, and then they choose, I'm going to flip down here. Now, I probably don't have it on here now that I've said that. But if the performance review process was, here it is, never mind. So I click this, performance review, and then I could go down to, there's a custom form version of it too that you can look at, but this was that one that we were just looking at for the salesperson. Now these fields are all live, so I can go and give, the grading and then put the comments in here. So fill out this form right here inside of TouchStone. When I save it, it date and time stamps it, saves it back to TouchStone, but also creates a printable version, which if you want to have the employees sign them, then that might be a reason to print it. Having said that, if you print this, they sign it, you can scan it back in and upload it back to the control panel. So you have this assigned instance of it back in TouchStone if you wanted to. So that is job descriptions as a management tool. Next week, we are going to be talking about process documentation. So we're going to be going to the process tools page, which is right here. I'm going to start with work plans and checklists. So next week is just going to be these two tools. And I'm going to talk about technically how to build them, all the functionality, but I'm also going to talk about what makes a good work plan, how to document a good work plan, what good tasks look like, what bad tasks look like, what are some best practices for documenting, how to make the best work plans possible, and also checklists. Having said that, if you have employees like we were talking about over here on the org chart who you want to be helping you document processes, next week's session would be a great one for them to come to, because they don't necessarily need to know everything about TouchStone. They don't need to know 4 functions or how to use the org chart. All they need to know is how to come to the process tools page and how to document a good work plan, how to use these tools and use the functionality. So actually the next 2 sessions are great for any employees that you want to have documenting processes. They can also bring questions. We kind of ran out of time for questions today, but if you do bring your employees who have documented things, you can ask them to bring questions as well. Thank you for coming, everybody, and hopefully we'll talk again next week.